works. Just like anything in life, the consistent, small, incremental, consistent steps are what bring you success. So usually the small efforts that you make to improve over time are what's going to bring you the most success.
So let's kind of change the conversation, or let's go to women, right? So women talk money. I'm in love with this sort of within Women in Wealth at Fidelity and Women Talk Money, and all of the conversations that the Fidelity team is bringing to light, right? We talk about that transfer of wealth. There's there's lots of myths out there that women are more risk adverse, etc. But you and your team are working with women every day. What are you hearing right now from women in particular, and advice that you may be giving them? And we know you can't give, financial advice, but just in general, what are you talking to women about?
So I would say that most of the time, women are just finding a way to engage with windfalls or inheritances. When that transfer of wealth that we're talking about, a lot of times we're meeting women at the point where they have to be the person in charge. Then they're figuring out what to do. The other thing that's really exciting to see too is that we have a lot of women coming up and they want to be involved and more involved in their own goals and their own objectives straight away, and they're finding a way to get it done, right? So I think a lot of the conversations that we're having with women range, but getting started with the basics, like how do I maintain a practice of financial wellness? Some of it is like the way that you spend your money, and how much should I save? How much should I pay off my student loans and things like that? And we could talk a little bit more about any of those topics. But I'm so proud to see more women engage with us now in my experience with wealth management services than ever before. And it's just so important. If women represent at least half of the population, we should see at least half the clients coming in be women. And it hasn't been that way for so long. So it's so encouraging to see people feel comfortable to access the information and advocate for themselves. Not be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand, say you don't understand. Get what you need,
Exactly.
right?
And by the way, you're not the only one in the room that doesn't understand.
Yes.
Right. And I think we often sort of interpret, or this is this self-critical behavior, like, oh, I'm the only one that doesn't know. And the reality is, if we do start talking about it more, hence Women Talk Money, then more people will feel comfortable bringing it up. I say this all the time. We talk at, you go to a brunch or after church and you're talking about everything else other than money, right? When these are really the biggest stressors in our life, right? They're some of the biggest decisions we're going to make in our life around money. And so these are the things that we should be sharing. We talk about our bosses, we talk about raises, we talk about our kids and our families. We should be talking more about money and how do we get better around asking those questions. One of the things that you have is the budget tracker, right? And it's really simple. The Fidelity guideline, and I think everybody has a different 50, 15, 5, 50% essential expenses, 15% retirement savings, 5% short-term savings. I think that people get overwhelmed thinking they have to save, it's got to be the 75-25, when really starting to accumulate that savings will lead, or hopefully lead to, that over time, not only retirement, but creating hopefully generational wealth.
Yeah, I believe the 15, and 5 also helps you prioritize. Another question I get is, like, as women, we get so many things put on us, so many things that we're trying to accomplish at one time. So sometimes it's like, do I save for my child's education or loved one's education? Do I save for retirement? Or do I, all of these different, do I pay down my debts?
Yes.
And 50, 15, 5 is a principled way to do what we always tell people. It's like, you can do it all. you can do it all, and here's how. So, like, try to get your essential expenses down to less than 50%. But number one after that, retirement. Like, you can't help anybody until you put the mask on yourself, essentially, right? So you need to be investing in your retirement. If you have access to a 401k, especially if you have access to matching money, number one thing that you should be doing. Then you think about the 5%. comes into a little bit of the comfort that people are feeling right now. We do have women coming in who are concerned about their jobs, or they'd like to in this job environment switch
Yep.
careers, which is a great opportunity. But they're trying to figure out how to navigate that. Your emergency savings, I call it emergency and opportunity savings. Make sure you have 3 to 6 months, sometimes a year, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, in the bank, in cash or something like cash, so that you have the opportunity to do more of what you want and less of what you need
Yeah.
to do in these situations like this. And hopefully give yourself a peace of mind. Like, if something happens, I'm going to be okay. And then when you look at, I love to talk about the 30% after that, right? Because that's lifestyle.
Yep.
What do you like to do, right? What makes you feel like you're living your best life? Then maybe there's other goals. We just had giving day
Yes.
yesterday, right?
Yesterday. Yep.
So if you're charitable like me, like, what are your goals for giving to organizations doing things that you care about in your community? Or maybe you want to help a kid go to school or whatever. So it's just a great guideline that shows how you can do everything at the same time, everything that matters to you, right?
Yeah, and I think it also, as you think about, depending on where you're at in your life stage, right? Whether big purchases that you want, a house, a car, maybe not right now with interest rates, but maybe it's a wedding, maybe it's a big trip, maybe it's, a family. I think there's also, what are those big things that you are thinking about in the short term that you need money? One of the things that I hear often is women that are leaving their current roles in corporate and starting businesses.
Yes.
Right. So that's another example of, okay, if you know that's something that you want to do and you're not able to go out and raise a bunch of money, that's a whole other conversation. But what can you save, and what does that look like, and how many, is that next year? Is that 5 years? So I think that business owner piece, especially for women, because more than 70% of women self-fund, bootstrap, stiletto strap their company. It's really thinking about, okay, where does it fit in that budget calculator?
And let me also talk a little bit more about this. And I
Yeah.
want to talk about debt too, but like, when you think about your other goals other than retirement, the time period that you're thinking about is important for what you do with it. So I just mentioned emergency savings, less than a year that you need available. That shouldn't be invested. That's what we call savings, not investing. So cash or cash like instruments. But if you're thinking something like a few years from now, you might consider a conservative investment type for that.
Mm.
If you're thinking something longer, you might consider more aggressive investment types for it. So that's how you determine how you categorize these different goals and how you invest. So again, if it's short, like a few years, might consider something more conservative, but you probably should consider investing it in something so it has better returns for you. It keeps up with inflation, hopefully outperforms inflation. And then when you're thinking about retirement, like, you got to take on some risk to get
Yeah.
there successfully. Also debt. Let's not overlook
Yes.
debt. Like,
Yes.
a lot of people are thinking about student loans, and a lot of student loans are on pause right now. We can maybe, if we want to be conservative, expect that we'll have to pay those back one
Yeah.
day. And one of the mistakes that I always try to bring up is, like, early in my career, I was getting these big windfalls of like bonuses, doing well in my career. And I was just raised with this mindset of like, oh, just get rid of debt, just get rid of debt right
Yeah.
away. I just throw all my money on my debt. And you know what? In hindsight, my interest rates from being in school were so low,
Low.
and I could have made much more progress on my goals if I had thought about that mindfully. So another rule of thumb that I'd like to offer the audience is, if you're trying to think about debt and do I rush to pay it off, or do I consider just this, what do you call it, servicing the debt over time and putting more into my investments?
Mhm.
I would say there's a 5, like, it's a rule of thumb. So it could be, different depending on your circumstance, but the 5% is like that water line, I'd say. So if your loans are above 5%, maybe you focus on paying that off.
Yep.
And if they're under 5%, you don't have to rush. You could probably get better returns from some type of investment.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. I think because when you do come out, the rates are so low.
Yeah.
I remember coming out of grad school and did the same as you. It was like, oh, I just got to just pay it off, right? And not even realizing or looking at the fact that the rate was so low, right? So that hindsight. But this is again back to why we're talking about money, right? One of these tips can be shared and shared and shared, and even with the student loan forgiveness, even with the holiday, at some point people will have to pay something, right? So you can only pay it off for so long. There's a question that came in, and I'm not sure, around debt, right? So what, as you think about the rule of thumb, is that 5% rate over that? Is that a good rule of thumb that, anything over 5%, I should be focusing on paying down?
Yeah. So first, to be clear, you should always make sure that you're maintaining the minimum.
Hmm.
So number one, that's going to be part of the way that you're spending your money, servicing your debt, and paying it on time, right? So that you don't cause problems for yourself during that time. You also want to make sure that you can manage doing that while having an emergency fund.
Yeah.
You also want to make sure that you can manage doing that while having an emergency fund and contributing to your retirement. And I think that that's the main consideration you need to make around what to do with extra money, right? Then once you start contributing to your retirement, you have an emergency fund going. That's going to help sustain you and build a stability for you in the future. You can start thinking about, oh, I have extra money here or there to start paying things down. And then that is where the 5% rule of thumb comes into play. Like, do I rush to pay it? Like, do I pay a lot or
Yeah.
do I just pay a little extra and start to work on other goals?
So I know we talked a little bit about the 50-15-5, the emergency life, and sort of emergency savings, et cetera. But for many people, and I mean, I'm one of them, 2022 was like a flash in the pan. Like, I can't believe we're almost in December and we just had Thanksgiving, and that we've got 1 month left of the year and we're in 2023. I think there are a lot of people, as we talked about and earlier in the show, that are just feeling uncertain. They're feeling uncomfortable. How do we make sure we're putting our best foot forward? And I think let's break it up into that, not making retirement sound so far away, right?
Yes.
Because even if it is so far away, you could start early, but it's also never too late to start. And then as you think of those short-term goals, how do we get ourselves ready for 2023 from a mental standpoint around our finances?
Yeah, so there are several things that I think about with this. So first, I'm going to sound like a broken record. If you can be investing for your retirement, you should be investing for your retirement, even if it's just 1%. And if you can bump it up until you're to the point that you're maxing it out. The
And and
second,
and Randall, we put, just so everyone knows, we put I love this. It's Fidelity has a financial retirement score in literally a minute. So we put that in the chat just so that people have that at their fingertips, because as you're talking about retirement, here's
yeah,
you put your age in there. It's a couple of questions, literally in a minute. You can get a good pulse check on where you're at.
absolutely. The second thing is, if you had debt, like we were just talking about debt, in this environment, you want to make sure. Maybe another thing that you could do for next year is make sure that you are getting the optimal rate. Like, if there's a better rate out there, you should be looking for it. The third thing I would say is your cash. Like, if your cash, your emergency savings is in the bank right now and it's not making any interest, like, rates are up. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of great options. So if it's like one little step that you do is make sure that your emergency savings is getting the best rate that you could possibly get. You can look online for tools with that. You can also talk to an advisor here at Fidelity or really any other firm, and they will help you find options for that. The third is like do those routine checkups. So if you haven't done one in a while, or if you haven't ever done one, make that a routine. Maybe around your birthday or annually around this time. Just like you go to the doctor, right? You should be doing this. Check in, see where you're at, see how you feel, see what help you need, what goals you have, and what is one place that you can make it just a little bit better. And an invitation here, if you've never done this, right? So we have advisors at Fidelity that you can meet with for free. And a lot of firms have this available. I don't think a lot of people know that because it's not as accessible. But this goes for whether you are a DIYer and you're doing it on your own, or if you want a little help, or if you want a lot of help. It's important to check in with an expert, just like you check in with your doctor, your dentist, all of those things. Check in with an expert. And here's why. Sometimes we need to get unstuck and get coaching through dealing with emotional things that are holding us back, helping us be inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
Or leading us to be inactive on things that we should be doing. The other thing is, you change every year. You need to reorient. You need to see, is this the right plan for me, or do I need to change it? The market changes every year. Am I still in the best place? Can you confirm with me that I'm in a good place? And then just like any other business, there are innovations and there are new things that come out. Like, listen, if I was investing the same way that my grandmother invested, it's not going to work now. But I promise you, there are people out there literally doing that. So make sure you're on the cutting edge as far as the best ways to get you to retirement, the best ways to get you towards that business that you're trying to open, the best ways to invest in the things that are important to you. So routinely meet with somebody.
Routine. Yeah. And that kind of brings up, there was a question that came in around doing things differently. Right. So I love that you said, like, if you're a DIYer, right, you should still get that gut check and talk to someone. And there are a lot of free resources out there and amazing opportunities, even at Fidelity, to talk to someone and say, am I on the right path? But are there other things that we should be doing differently? Because money is so personal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And again, the last 3 years has been kind of uncertain, even though we saw a great amount of consumer savings because people weren't traveling, they weren't going anywhere. Then we saw people coming out. Now we're heading into a recession. So what could we be doing differently outside of that gut check and talking to someone? I know we talked about the budget tracker. We talked about the retirement. Where are you on the spectrum there? If you haven't started on the investment or the retirement, and this is a bigger challenge, I think, what are some of those things that people can start to do, right? I mentioned earlier, it's never too late to start, but I think there is also that people feel like guilty, like I haven't done enough. So what else can we do?
So first, the guilt with not having done enough is like, it's so easy living in America to feel like you're never doing enough. And again, my invitation is to think about the small incremental changes that you can make that can be consistent. Like, I am going to do this financial wellness check-in. I am going to increase or start investing for my retirement. Here's some other things to consider, right? There are always different estate laws coming up, right? Make sure you have your estates in order and think about your estate planning if you hope to give a legacy to someone, right? Often overlooked and so important. It's just hard to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And if you have family members that are older, make sure they have theirs in order. You also, another thing that tends to come up a lot more too is people's concerns about security and identity theft, right? There's like deep fake videos and all sorts of things. So think about, what's one thing I can do to keep my data safer, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't log into your financial accounts on certain types of computers or things like that. But I'll also be thinking about how you keep your information safe. And lastly, this is just real simple. And I wish more women did this. And you mentioned it before. Just talk to people about your money. Talk to people about what you're doing. Share what you're learning. Share what you're concerned about. Because like my belief, going back to what I mentioned before, community holds so much for us. It's a bounty for
Yeah.
so much of us. And if we are more willing to bring money and conversations about money and what we're doing into our community, the better off we are. Oh, I missed one. I missed a big one. We always talk about how can I cut back and save more? How can I save more? How can you make more money? Do you have a hobby or a side thing, or you want to start your own business? Ask for a raise. A lot of people are doing annual reviews right now.
Yes.
So I throw that one in there too. Try to make more money.
Absolutely. And start having, I mean, I love this because you got to have the conversation, right? If you don't have the conversation, if you don't have put together, I always say, put together that business case so your manager can't turn you down, right? And something that I shared on the Women Talk Money session that I did with Lorna and Reshma was, if your manager, because of budget cuts, because of layoffs, is like, it's not a good time. Okay, so when will it be a good time? If I'm performing and I am exceeding your expectations and understand the challenges financially that companies are going through in the market, but when will be the time? And let's get that roadmap. So if you're not asking, if you don't ask, you don't get. And the worst thing someone can say is no, but you build that case around why you deserve it. And the last thing I will say this, sorry, I can get on a soapbox, Randall, about this, is you do not need a raise. We need a lot of things, but you deserve, if you are performing, if you are contributing, if you are an asset, you deserve. And so I think we also have to change and reframe the conversation with our managers and leaders.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that so much. And then just back to the idea of doing that, we should normalize talking about ways that we can increase what we're earning, just as much as we're thinking about the market and how our retirement accounts are moving around. A big contributor is how much you earn and how well you work and how well you communicate the work that you're doing. So you deserve it. Absolutely.
You do, right? It's and this is this, we just often have told, I think, particular women of color, like, oh, you'll get it when it comes, versus
gonna tap on your shoulder and say, "Hey, kid, good job."
No. People have to be aware of everything that you're contributing, and your manager should, but you've got to keep that conversation going. So I love that you brought that up. And by the way, it's okay to want to make money. Whether you're giving back to your community, you're creating generational wealth in your community, in your family. I happen to actually be in Atlanta today and tomorrow. Luminaries on the road, and I have a conversation later on with Bea Dixon, who's the founder and CEO of the Honey Pot. And she's raised money and she's built this incredible company over the last 10 years. And one of the things she's not shy about is she wants to sell her company eventually for a lot of money, so she can create true generational wealth for herself, her family, and her community. And the fact that she's a woman of color, a Black woman, and that she says it, I think we have to just get more comfortable. And I think that will normalize even the conversation amongst work colleagues around, well, how much should I be asking for? What's my bonus potential? Things like that.
That's why things like mentorship and sponsorship are so important, for somebody to be able to have those candid conversations with you and help you prepare well for those. And then somebody that will advocate for you if it's a position that you want or an opportunity that's going to say your name, and make sure that your brand is strong and help you get to where you're trying to get to financially.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What do you tell someone who is getting closer to retirement?
So, first of all, congratulations. I can't wait to get there. So you might be thinking at this point, what does retirement look like? What type of retirement can I afford? Maybe your dreams, maybe your concerns are coming to the forefront. The bottom line here is that you typically are going to shift at this point what you've been doing. You've been in an accumulation phase, you've been stocking it away, and then you're going to shift to distribution phase. That requires a different way of looking at what you're doing with your money. It requires sometimes a different investment strategy. So this is a good time to check in with an advisor to prepare for what's ahead.
Mm.
Number two is make sure you're still like contributing to your 401ks. If you are above the age of 50, you have extra money you can put in your 401k. You have extra money you can put into your IRA. Your health savings account, which is one of those places where, not outside of just this year, but like a period, we see a lot of inflation, a lot of rising costs, and we know retirees experience a lot of healthcare costs. So don't forget about the HSA.
Yeah.
All of those have catch-up provisions. Make sure that you're taking advantage of those tax-sheltered ways to stock away money for the future. And if you meet with a financial professional, the things that you should be talking about are how you'll handle healthcare, your Medicare options, how you'll handle Social Security. There are a lot of different options, and sometimes that can be intimidating. They can help you figure that out. And then creating an income strategy based on what you want, right? Nowadays, people don't have those. Some people don't have pensions, so you have to figure out how to create consistent income on your own, and that can be scary. But there are resources available to help you with that. And the last thing that I wish more people did at this point is to talk about generational wealth, talk about estate and legacy. Get it set up right now.
Yeah, it's never too late. Doesn't matter where you're at. And also things can change. I mean, I'm in the process of redoing my will right now, right? And things change, but it's a living document. It doesn't, you have to keep refreshing, just like your finances. One of the links that we put in was the step-by-step guide to choosing and how to invest money. Right? If you've never done it, if you're just starting, if you are nearing retirement and you want to do a little bit more, what are you thinking about? That these guides are really there just to help, right? They're not meant to overwhelm. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed very quickly. A question that came in, it sounds like I wrote it. They are a cash hoarder. And I am a cash hoarder. So I am a traditional Gen Xer, save. So any tips for the cash hoarders out there? And I don't mean to use offensive language but I am if you really are saver, how do you make your money work for you and get comfortable with putting some of that in investments or retirement?
Yeah, I think this is a Warren Buffett quote, but the only investment that's guaranteed to lose value over time is cash. So, and how does that happen? Inflation. And there have been so many years that we haven't had to think about inflation, which is usually like only 2 or 3%. Now we have double-digit inflation at this time, and we're thinking about it a lot more. And it's a lot more tangible to understand how your cash could lose value. But consider that, right? You're guaranteed not to make any money with cash as well. You're guaranteed not to make any money. So that cash should be used for money that you plan to use over the next year. Now, there might be certain points in time where people feel comfortable, and my invitation would be to you and other people who have an abundance of cash is, like, if you consider your essential expenses, you boil it down to that. And how many months you want to be prepared for, or any purchases that you expect within the next year, that you not allow yourself to go over that, right? Here's the other thing. I think we think about things too much like binaries, like it's either cash or like super aggressive investments, right? There's such a range in between, right? And if there's something that you want in the shorter term, like a few years, there are conservative investments that you can do that keep less of a risk curve, less of a volatile curve than something like the stock market, or a combination of the two, right? That can kind of get you more comfortable getting started. And sometimes you're in cash because you don't know how to get started.
Right.
Fidelity and a lot of investment companies, but I can speak about Fidelity. They have great tools for you to research different types of investments to get started. And basically, you need to decide 3 things. One, what asset allocation you need. So like you can look at so many tools and do a little risk analysis on what you're trying to do. And you can figure out how much of my money should be in what asset class. When I say asset class, we're talking about equities like stocks, bonds, like fixed income. Essentially, what does that need to look like in order for you to manage that spectrum from cash to crazy aggressive investments? Then you use a research tool to plug those things in, right? We have so many things that you can screen for stocks. You can screen mutual funds that allow you a little bit more diversification with one shot. ETFs, they're more tax efficient. You know,
Yep.
you can talk to somebody, pick up the phone, talk to somebody for free. Hey, talk me through this. What do I want, right?
Yep.
And then opening the account, putting money into the account, and then making your first purchase. So maybe that's a goal. If you're a cash hoarder, you're not invested on your own, that you decide your asset allocation.
Yep.
You decide how you're going to invest. Is it stocks? Is it bonds? Is it like ETFs, mutual funds? You find them, you open your account, and you place your very first purchase. And people help you through that for free.
Yeah.
Just get started. Get started. Get the wheels turning.
Get started, because then you start to, and again, I think people have the tendency to, well, it's not making any money. Well, your cash isn't making any money either.
And listen, I think we over focus on returns.
Mm-hmm.
We over focus on return. Every single thing that you buy in an investment account is going to go up and down. Like, for example, we're in the late stage of the economic cycle. This is a more popular time for people to be looking at bonds and fixed debt instruments, right? Because they tend to thrive right now. But I promise you, if I talk to somebody in the earlier stage, the boom, where that straight line up on the economic cycle, no one wants to talk about bonds.
Right.
Everyone wants to talk about stocks. And you know what you do when you jump around? You're late to the party every single time, and you're not getting the returns that you hope to get. The answer is to have a diverse portfolio and have it be consistent.
Yeah.
That's 90% of your returns right there.
You know, it's so much, Randall, about just having a plan, right? I tell this to as a business owner now myself, right? I tell business owners, you have to have a business plan. That's your North Star. You need that, because that you have to know where you're trying to get to and what's that guiding light, right? So financially, personally, you need to have that plan, and kind of throwing everything at the wall doesn't work, right? And I love that you continue to reiterate, right? If you've been doing this a while, or you're new into it, maybe you have a life change, buying something, a divorce, kid, whatever, just talk to someone. And there are so many free resources out there. Obviously, Fidelity, and I know Women Talk Money hosts so many events. We're going to put that link in the chat around all of the events that they're hosting, just to get women, yes, because it's Women Talk Money, educated and aware, so they can take financial control and feel financial freedom.
And talking to somebody, let's get to that, because like some people are intimidated by that. Like, oh, they're going to be giving me all these phrases, I don't know what to expect. What you can expect is that they're going to sit down with you and help you clarify and define your goals if you don't already have them. They'll listen to what's important to you. They have the tools available to get you to a point of clarity about what you're trying to accomplish if you're struggling with that. Then they'll do an idea of like, where are you? Like, how far along are you? Doing good? Is there some work that we need to do? And then give you actionable steps to take next, either on your own, or if you need them to do it, they could, like, a lot of times they could do much of those things for you. But that's what you can expect when you talk to an advisor. And here's the other thing. I don't want anyone to discount the support of an advisor if they have a bad experience with the first one. Mm-hmm. That's why we want so many different people in this industry, because just different people click. That relationship's important, because you have to be able to be vulnerable. Like, I'm concerned, or like, speak your language and make sure you feel understood. So if you don't have a great experience the first time, find somebody else. Don't stop looking. You will find somebody that you jive with, and will be such a great partner for you getting to where you're trying to go.
Two last questions. Although I think we could talk for so long on this. What is the biggest mistake you see, or you're seeing right now, with the people that you talk to?
I think one of the reasons why I focus on community and talking to people, even if I mentioned talking to an advisor, is that with the point that you just mentioned before, money is so personal. When
Mhm.
something belongs to us, we tend to be less rational,
Yes.
more emotionally escalated. And the biggest mistake that I see people do, especially now, is let that drive them to inconsistency and
Mhm.
let that drive them to inaction. So my invitation is, if like your emotions matter, they're like a little temperature that's telling you that something needs to be addressed. Address it, right?
Yeah.
If you're concerned, if you don't understand, seek it out. Get the help that you need, get the understanding that you need so that you can make a decision and move through it and move forward. Because I promise you, ignoring it or bopping around based on how you feel is not the way to get anywhere successfully. In fact, it's detrimental to what you're trying to do. So get that support.
I love the word, one of the words you used, inaction,
Yes.
right? You got to take control, right? In order to relieve these stressors, in order to feel like you can create that path, you've got to take action. And sitting and doing nothing, or feeling, I would say, even almost paralyzed, right? It's overwhelming. I don't want to do this. I'll do it another time.
And listen, we have women especially have so much on your plates, and where I think we're kind of used to ignoring this part. And there are some places where you have to manage your time well, and you have to make those decisions. Like, I'm going to focus on this and not that. But money, don't. That's not a place.
Yeah.
That's not a place to avoid. So make sure you have that support of your community or an advisor that you can talk to help you get unstuck. It is completely natural to have those emotions with something that belongs to you. And it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard, but you need that support to get you actionable about the things that you're concerned about.
Yeah, and regardless of your gender who's watching or will watch this later, go to fidelity.com. Fidelity.com/women is all around Women Talk Money and the resources that Fidelity is providing in particular. And again, I reiterate this, that 2/3 of the wealth will be controlled by women in less than 10 years by 2030. So we've got to take that control, and for ourselves, for our families, for that generational wealth we keep talking about. The last question is really around the best piece of money advice you want to leave the people with that are listening today.
Yeah. By the way, shout out to the men and the non-binary folks out there that tell me that they love this website. So check it out. Everybody, check it out. The best piece of money advice that I would give somebody today, and I can think grand or I can think current, actionable right now. So maybe I'll give you two. Hopefully, I shared a lot of information today. Hopefully something resonated deeply with you that you can bring to mind right now. And my invitation is that you get started on it today or before the end of this week. Make a deadline for yourself and get actionable about it. Talk to somebody. And lastly, if you have cash, I would say more to this environment. If you have cash laying around and it's genuinely emergency savings, make sure you're getting the best rate.
Make sure you're getting the
Check it
best rate. Yeah.
out.
That inaction, right? So go and find out, because if you haven't looked, and there are plenty, by the way, now checking accounts and saving accounts that have higher yield. But if you're not doing the due diligence to find out what you're currently getting, all you have to do is look at the fine print, go on your bank's website, and ask questions.
Yes. That's the thing. Ask somebody. Ask somebody.
Ask somebody. So I know there were some people that weren't able to see some of the links, but I'm just going to say, go to fidelity.com. That is the best place. There is a wealth of resources, the budget tracker, the how to invest, the maxing out your retirement, understanding where you're at for your retirement goals, and certainly for Women Talk Money. fidelity.com/money. And I would recommend, if you haven't connected with Randall on LinkedIn, you do so. Randall Lenore, right on there. I'm going to put her, make sure everyone knows. And it's been such a great conversation. A little plug for next week. And if you're in New York or if you're virtual, we've got another great event in partnership with Fidelity at Luminary called Advocating for What You're Worth, both from a financial side all the way to, Randall, what we talked about earlier around advocating for yourself or at your job, if you're going out and raising money for your company, et cetera, et cetera. So December 7th, check it out at Luminary, weareluminary.com/events. And Randall, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for sharing so much wealth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And have a wonderful holiday season and a great prep for 2023.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for joining Goaldigger. This was a special edition of Women Talk Money with Fidelity. And you can see this throughout on our page at Luminary and my personal page. And I'm sure Randall will be posting it as well. And if you're a Luminary member, it will be in our content library that you can download this later. We are so thrilled to be partnering with Fidelity on this important conversation. And Randall, thank you again for sharing so much information and the wealth of knowledge, pardon the pun. We will see you all on the next Goaldigger. Have a great rest of the day.